Buryat scholar, and it's a indigenous group living in Siberia, in Mongolia, and China. So I was born and raised in a small Buryat village, and mostly my upbringing was affected by my grandmother, who was an elder in our village, and she was knowing everything about history of our family, and I was always listening to her stories about not only ancestors but also about all our relations with human and non-human beings. So, and then when I came to academia, to geography, my specialization was on human geography. So I studied relations with land, cultural geography, economic and social geography mostly. And then in my PhD, we call it кандидатская work. I was studying mostly from the Western perspective, the what we call then socio-cultural complex in multi-ethnic environment. What it means that we were just focusing on studies of cultures, economy, and livelihoods in small villages. And I was focusing on my own village and trying to compare how livelihoods in our village are different from Polish village, from Russian village, and also we had some Tatar communities, so I was also looking how it's different from Tatar livelihoods. Now I'm working here in the George Washington University at the Department of Geography, and it's interesting how it was after so many years, it was possible to bring together what I was learning from my grandmother and from my scientific supervisors, and that this convergence of knowledge now is possible, and now people start to appreciate how it's important to bring all different ways of knowing together. So that's what I'm trying to do in my research now. So now I'm working on the project called Frozen Commons, and what it means, we study snow, ice, and permafrost, and related landscapes, and any phenomena related to snow, ice, and permafrost, and how they are not only existing as physical matter, but how they are affecting livelihoods, and how they are related to people's perceptions, their ideas, and how they are governed by communities, by indigenous communities, but also by other stakeholders. This knowledge is currently existing in different forms, and I heard in your previous episode about glaciologists, how they are learning from glaciers, and I found it fascinating how they describe it. So there is some understanding that snow, ice, and permafrost are very important for our lives on the planet. But from another side, I think they are still underappreciated. And especially when we talk about governance, about decision making, because most of the decision making is happening in the warmer climates, and sometimes there is no deep understanding what this snow, ice, and permafrost mean, not only in general for climatic processes, but in particular places, because people, especially in the Arctic, indigenous people, they have developed very deep understanding and very deep connections with land and with especially with frozen matter, because that's where they mostly live. So to bring that understanding, to elevate the voices of indigenous peoples, I think it's very important right now with climate change. And I started to think about this problem when I was conducting my previous project on informal roads. So informal roads is the roads that exist unofficially or used in some unofficial ways. But in the Arctic and in other cold regions, we see that these roads quite often are not mapped, but they are very important, and quite often they are more prevalent in the winter time, like winter roads, roads over peatlands, over lakes and rivers, and that in the winter time people get much more connectivity than they can afford in the summer. And especially if we talk about mainland communities, interior Alaska, for example. So that's where we are focusing right now, working with communities in interior Alaska and northern part of Mongolia. Permafrost ice and snow are very important. And learning from communities, working with communities, we are trying to better understand how snow, ice, and permafrost affect Arctic livelihoods, and how it's important to preserve these relations, and what we can do to adapt to climate change in the future. Our project for understanding of frozen commons and for some other projects, we use this convergence of different knowledge systems, and we call it ArtsLink, and it means art, science, local and indigenous knowledge. And while I already mentioned about indigenous knowledge, we think that artistic perspective is also very important, and quite often it can help us to understand what people mean, what ideas are behind the conversation. And then artistic methods are also quite, we find them quite useful for communicating our findings, to bring our knowledge to wider audience. We have several projects. It's Frozen Commons is just one of them. Then we have Ceros. It's on urban green, blue, and white spaces in the Arctic cities. It's also almost ended. And then we have project measuring urban sustainability and transition, where we study Arctic cities, how they are developing towards more, sustainable and just way for the future. So, and so for frozen commons, we haven't started our expeditions yet. Our first expedition will be this spring in Mongolia, but here you can find other expeditions, and you can see what kind of collaboration between communities, artists, and scholars we have utilized for understanding of different research questions. And there are some videos. And we not only produce papers, but also create exhibitions. And for example, Arctic Infrascapes last year was organized during the Arctic Science Summit Week. And at this exhibition, we tried to bring together several projects, including informal roads and frozen commons. Also, we still just starting to build relations with communities. We think that it's good from the beginning to start formulating questions and bringing community perspectives and voices to how we approach our research as it develops. So here you can find a lot of pictures. And now we are also trying to work with artificial intelligence, and sometimes it also helps to, look, how you say, beyond your, out of the box, and bring some ideas for future development. Here is the link to exhibition that I mentioned on Arctic infrastrips. So here you can find different works by artists created for specifically for this exhibition, and then there are some works created during our travel to Siberia together with artist Stanislav Podusenko, and then in Mongolia, when we just started our work together with Mongolian colleagues. We have Hot Butter Sandak from Mongolia as our project partner, but also we are working with community members, and in spring we will organize workshop where we will discuss how we can better organize our next steps for the research, and to bring us to communities that they will be informed about what we are going to do, and to make sure that their questions and concerns will be addressed as much as possible. Yeah, remoteness, it's very important concept when we are talking about indigenous communities and about Arctic communities in general, because it's not as much physical as political construct, because usually what it means that you are removed, you are distant from the decision-making process. And the people who live in remote places quite often are affected by decisions made somewhere else. So they have little autonomy to make their own decisions, to plan for the future. Planning and even sometimes, construction, everything is happening somewhere else. And especially we see it I saw it in Alaska, that all this housing was planned and materials were brought from somewhere else. And these materials and construction techniques and designs were not suited for environment. And then, of course, it created all kinds of issues for communities, like this housing is inadequate for, modern living. Yeah, I think it's quite still under appreciated, under explored, that people don't think about Mongolia as a cold region. Usually the images are of Gobi Desert or some steppe, some, camel, but the, permafrost covered area is fifth, so Mongolia is fifth country by permafrost extent. So it is very, very important for local livelihoods. And especially when we talk about the north of Mongolia, mountainous regions, they have glaciers that communities depend on, and then they have snow, and they have reindeer herders, and reindeer herders live about very, very similar lifestyle as Siberian reindeer herders. And especially now when we don't have much communication with Siberian indigenous people, we can learn a lot from reindeer herders in Mongolia, Duha people, and I think if we want to have better understanding of the processes in the Arctic, how it's changing, we need to look at different governance regimes, because now we have a lot of research happening in Alaska and in Canada. Although Alaska and Canada have different governance regimes, it's still more Western and it has a lot of similarities. But to understand differently, we need to look for other cases. We need to look for other examples. And in Mongolia, we find this example based on, they also had a planning social system in the past, and then they transitioned to market economy, but they also have very heavy emphasis on development of cultures and nature, and they have a lot of land protected for environmental purposes, and to understand how all these different legacies and different relations with land can affect our governance of ice, snow, and permafrost. It's very important for just for better probably understanding what are the options for future development. We started to work with artists in my previous project, Informal Roads, and then we had an artist, Stanislav Padusenko, traveling with us to expedition. And for me, it was such a eye-opening, I would say, because how he perceives landscapes, how he asks questions, it's completely different from a scholarly perspective and from indigenous perspectives, that it kind of added some depth to our research. And for me, it was also the way to ask deeper questions, probably. Right now, when we developed further cooperations with artists, we work with James Temte from Alaska Pacific University. And in Alaska, we had workshops conducted by indigenous photographer Jenny Irene Miller. And what she brought to our conversation is using photo voice. And photo voice is so amazing tool to empower communities. So she taught communities how to use cameras and how to take, she doesn't say take, she says make pictures. And I never thought before about photography as a colonial tool, but even in the language, when we talk about taking pictures, it means that we just being extractive as usual. And she wants to shift focus towards making pictures, to bring our voices through our photos. And it's such a powerful instrument, I think, for, you would say, decolonization, for empowerment of communities. So now communities have this power to decide what should be in the images, when they think about frozen commons, and they can describe landscapes and whatever they see, whatever photos they make by their own words, by their own images.